The 13th century. Mongol armies are burning and destroying Asia. Thousands of Turkmen families have been torn from their roots, drifting through uncertainty. The Kayi Tribe is caught in the middle of this chaos. No leader, no homeland, no future. And then at that very moment, a woman stepped forward. She played no throne games. She plotted no intrigue. She simply stood her ground. And that woman's name was Hayme Ana. Her grandson would go on to build an empire that would last 6 centuries. Her real name is debated to this day. Some sources refer to her as Fatima. But history remembered her by another name, Hayme Ana. In Ottoman Turkish, Hayme meant a tent, an ota, a dwelling. But this name was never just about shelter. In the Ottoman world, a tent also meant a state. So Hayme Ana was the mother of the tent, the mother of the state. Human history is usually written on great battlefields, in the shadow of bloodied swords. We are always told about those sharp blades of steel that forged empires. But hidden between the pages of history books lies another force, rarely heard yet world-changing. The unyielding will that forged those blades and held those armies together. The mid-13th century. The world was being shaken by one of the most terrifying storms in its history. The Mongol invasion had descended upon the Islamic world, and Anatolia like a dark cloud rolling in from the east. Cities were falling one by one, libraries were being burned, and ancient civilizations thousands of years old were crumbling into dust. Humanity believed the apocalypse was upon them. But at the very center of this immense chaos, there was a quiet point, a place where the course of history would be decided once more. When the fierce and freezing waters of the Euphrates swallowed Suleyman Shah, the great leader of the Kayi Tribe, it was not just a chieftain who had died. An entire tribe had lost its compass, its father, and its belief in the future. The night was pitch black. A storm was relentlessly battering the tents. Who would break the terrifying silence that had fallen over the camp? That night there was a silhouette standing upright against the wind. A woman whose hair flew in the gale, but whose eyes shone as bright as stars. She was Hayme Ana, carrying within her heart not just a tribe, but the great secret of a world empire yet to be born. The disappearance of Suleyman Shah into the Euphrates was not merely a period of mourning for the Kayi camp. It was an existential crisis. Hundreds of leaderless tents faced the constant threat of annihilation in this wild land of Anatolia. The tribe had split in two. One side believed the adventure was over. They wanted to turn back to return to the safe embrace of their homeland in Khorasan. The other side intended to march west, into the unknown, toward the swords and the borders of Byzantium. Fear gripped people's throats like an invisible hand. The smell of burning left behind by Mongol horsemen still lingered in their nostrils. Ahead lay seemingly impassable mountains. Behind them, death. Anatolia at that time was like a chessboard. Every chieftain was trying to build his own castle, every sultan striving to protect his own throne. The Seljuk state itself was being shaken from within and without. The Kayi tribe was being tossed about in the middle of this enormous storm like a single leaf. Hayme Ana could see the deep despair in the eyes of the women in the camp. She could hear the children whimpering from hunger and the elders whispering among themselves, "Are we going to die here?" A decision had to be made. Either they would fade away, forgotten on history's dusty shelves, or they would witness the dawn of a new sun in the west. And so the long-awaited council was convened. The chieftains sat around the smoldering central fire, deep lines of grief etched across their faces. The arguments were so fierce that the air inside the tent was more tense than the storm raging outside. "Turn back!" cried some of the chieftains. "The Euphrates became our grave. Anatolia will not be our friend." Others bowed their heads and waited silently for their fate. And then, one of the rarest moments in history unfolded. Hayme Ana walked, like a lion, into the very center of that great council, a gathering where women were not even customarily permitted to enter. "Chieftains, Khans, listen. When we set out from Khorasan, we did not set out with the intention of ever turning back. We came here to build a homeland, to plant the banner of justice. Suleyman Shah's legacy is not so light that it should be buried in the waters of the Euphrates. If we scatter now, it will not only be our camp that is lost. Our very lineage will be trampled beneath the hooves of the Mongols. My son Ertugrul and those who believe in him will march west, to where the sun sets but hope rises, to the borders of Byzantium, to Söğüt. Our hearth will burn there, our state will take root there." These words were not merely the cry of a mother. They were the voice of 1,000 years of Turkish statecraft, spoken through the lips of one woman. The chieftains in the council fell silent. The arguments were cut off like a knife. The decision made in that tent that day was not just a migration route. That day, the genetic code of a world empire was written by the unbreakable will of a single woman. As Hayme Ana placed that heavy burden upon the shoulders of her son Ertugrul Ghazi, she was in truth giving him something far greater, the vision of a universal state. Patience, loyalty, wisdom. The Kayi tribe was no longer merely a clan. It had become the bearer of a great cause. Difficult roads were crossed, snow-covered mountains were traversed. When they finally reached the fertile green valleys of Söğüt, Hayme Ana was no longer just a mother. She was the founding spirit of a state, Devlet Ana, mother of the state. She became the greatest advisor to her son Ertugrul, and the first teacher of her grandson Osman. It was she who whispered into little Osman's ear that justice is sharper than any sword, that a tribe can only be held together through love and wisdom. Years passed, generations changed, but the small seed Hayme Ana had planted grew into a mighty oak, rooting itself across 3 continents. We are always told about great commanders, conquered cities, and spilled blood. But we must never forget, the greatest victories are first won in the hearts of mothers. The magnificent 600-year journey of the Ottoman Empire began with the patience of a woman, with the prayer of a mother. Hayme Ana changed the course of history, and she did it, not through intrigue, not with a sword, but simply by standing her ground.